Aloha, welcome to another video. Let's talk about Chapter 6 for IS 330. Chapter 6 talks about data communications, and particularly about networking or computer networks, as well as the last half of the chapter talks about security in terms of data communications. First of all, when we talk about a network, we're talking about a set of connected computers, or we also call them devices. And these connected computers are connected through transmission media, which could include cables, wireless signals, and so on. Okay, so you have a collection of computers or computing devices that are connected through these transmission media. There are three different types of networks, three basic types of networks. There are local area networks, which involve networks managed by a single organization in a single geographic location. There are wide area networks, which include collections of computers connected across multiple geographic locations. And then there are internets or internetworks. These are networks made up of other networks. And the internet that most of us are familiar with as we use the World Wide Web is the most popular but not the only internetwork. Okay. So in this chapter you'll learn about some of the components of networks, both local area networks and wide area networks and internetworks, which includes the hardware and something called the protocols, or the rules of communication among these devices. Okay, so you'll learn about those different pieces, and in the last half of the chapter you'll be introduced to some issues surrounding what's called encryption, or making sure that no one is eavesdropping on the messages that you send across, say, the internet. And you'll read about some upcoming technologies that could influence the way that these networks are used and that provide business opportunities for using these technologies. Which brings us to collaboration exercise number 6. Collaboration exercise number 6 focuses on the MIS in use case featured in Chapter 6, which talks about a technology called WiMax, and particularly a company that was known as Clearwire, which has now been renamed as Clear. Okay. The idea is you have a lot of high-speed internet cable that's been run under streets, fiber optic cable, copper cable, things like that, that are providing a lot of really fast connections to the internet. But the problem is there's not a really fast connection between those large cables and, say, your house. And so the types of services that you can receive are limited and are based on the type of cable that's run into your house. This is called the last mile problem, because it's the last mile of the connectivity that's really holding up a lot of the really game-changing or really new ideas of what can be done using this data communications technology, both for personal consumers as well as for businesses. Yeah. So Clearwire is trying to use wireless signals to provide high-speed data connectivity to residences and businesses. So in the MIS in use case, you'll be learning about how they're doing this, what technologies that they're developing, what the upcoming standard called WiMax, or 802.16, is going to mean for businesses, and why Clear hopes to make money in this. And Clear is actually a combination of the original Clearwire firm as well as other popular communications businesses that have joined in, like Sprint, Intel, Google, that are all trying to move this platform ahead. This WiMax standard is not without competitors. You'll have the opportunity to learn a little bit about what the developments are in that area. But for this and the collaboration exercises you've already done so far, the general idea is the same. We're looking at an emerging technology. This emerging technology is changing something. It's changing a process. It's changing the limitations of a process. With Microsoft Surface, it was the way that you might interact with a computing device to manipulate or gather information or communicate with other devices or objects or display information. With Clear, what's changing is the accessibility of high-speed data communications. And not only is it being extended beyond this last mile, but the most recent developments in WiMax are also making possible the high-speed data connections across mobile devices in movement, like on a commuter train or on a bus or things like that, which is previously was very, very, very challenging to do. So WiMax shows great promise. There are some new business models, business opportunities that are arising. And so you'll read about that in the MIS in use case. And then you're going to be looking at, you'll read the case, and then you'll need to do some research to figure out, well, this edition of the book, although it's published this year, the case was really written up in 2008. So a lot's happened between 2008 and 2010 in terms of this project. So question number one is, what is the current situation? Is this technology operational? As of the writing of the textbook, there were still some limitations as to how operational Clear was in rolling out its networks and whether they were using these technologies. What products are being offered, and how many customers does Clear have? And where are they? What markets are they currently looking at? What is Clearwire's current revenue and profitability? So it says Clearwire is a public company, so go out and try to see if you can find reports about profitability. How much in revenue are they making? And then question number two, what is Clearwire's near-term 2 to 3 year opportunity? Okay, so they raised $3.2 billion in May. What did they plan to do with it? And you may be able to find out what did they do with it. And what's the projected rollout of how this is going to develop in the next 2 to 3 years. And question number three, we're starting to broaden our perspective beyond Clear and look at, well, who's competing with Clear? And I'll give you a hint, one of the competitors is AT&T. So you can figure out, well, what's the competition with Clear, and more particularly, what's the competition with WiMax? And it says, compare and contrast Clearwire's capability with that of the iPhone. So the iPhone is running on AT&T's network, and it's providing expanded connectivity services in complex applications over a fairly high-speed network. So what's the difference? Besides the iPhone, who else is in competition with Clear? And how will this competitive landscape change in the next few years? So as we mentioned when we were talking about Porter's 5 forces and competition, that when we want to look at the 5 forces, we want to try and figure out, well, what does this industry look like, not just as a static snapshot, but also in terms of where is this going? Which forces in here are growing and which ones are weakening? Okay, so try and figure out how is this competitive landscape going to change. And finally, assume that Clearwire is successful. Identify 5 opportunities that its success will create for you. So now that we have WiMax, well, what's the new business opportunity that you can create based on this? What services could you provide either to people using this WiMax service or in combination with this WiMax service? Use the example of Larry Jones in case study 6, which you'll be doing for your individual review question for this chapter, to stimulate your thinking, but do not constrain yourself to the campus market that he considered. So that, in a nutshell, is collaboration exercise number 6. Now, what I'd like you to do is, if there's any part of this assignment that's not clear, or any part of the related material in the chapter that's not clear, send me an email, and I will prepare another video explaining that concept, and we can share it with the rest of the class. And then we'll see if we can kind of broaden out the dialogue, the class level conversation about these topics as well. Mahalo.